Well, now me and my glasses. That's wonderful. I can now. Oh. Okay, Greg, I got a lot of questions for you. I saw the interview and I saw it again that you did with Chavez,
Hmm.
which I thought was wonderful. And I think we needed to be reminded of that. And so, let me turn
Oh
this
yeah,
off. So I wanted to, because I think it's important that people know that you had a relationship with him and that you
yes,
and that you talked to him and what
a
that means.
lot.
Well, because I also
That.
had a cab driver last night, a young man. He was
Hmm.
21 and he loved Chavez. The only reason he's here is because he was squeezed economically. So,
Yeah.
so we're up in five. Hey, everybody, I'm back. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. It is a joy to be with you. We've got a lot to talk about. It just seems like fate has its foot on the gas. 2025, 2026, nothing is letting up. Greenland, Venezuela, Minnesota, Minneapolis. What is going on? The Insurrection Act, Posse Comitatus. Whew. The 250th year, the anniversary of the founding of the Republic. And so much is at play here. The Monroe Doctrine, the Donroe Doctrine, shall I say. Um, and it seems that the president, well, he will tell you the truth now. He will tell you what he is going to do. He's now talking about maybe the elections. Maybe we won't have those. He keeps throwing that out there. He keeps talking about, he did mention that he would be deploying ICE on our streets and basically war games. He was going to declare war almost on the American people. And here we are. What does this mean? Where will this go? And now the data is showing, the Gallup poll and other polls are showing that only 27% of Americans in each party identify as Republican or Democrat. 45%, and the numbers are climbing, want nothing to do with either of the major parties. What does all of this mean? Well, I said, let me reach out to Greg Palast because I was always trying to figure out where he is. He's like, Waldo, where is he in the world and what is he doing? And you know what? I came across an interview that he had with Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez. And I said, this is really interesting because I think it's important for us to talk to people who actually knew him, who understood something that this young man, Greg Palast, something that he understood, that it is really that there was a love for him. And so maybe the taking of Maduro, the kidnapping of President Maduro, maybe didn't quite work out the way they had calculated that it would. But of course, this great investigative reporter, of course, vigilantes, well, I think everybody overseas is about to see it now. And it's more important than ever before because who knows if we'll have the 2026 elections? I don't know. He knows the acting president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, who was very close to President Chavez and President Maduro. So you need to go to gregpalace.com so that you can keep up with him and find out what is going on with him. There is a free half-hour documentary, The Assassination of Hugo Chavez. Where do we begin? Hello, correctional officer for the lockdown. Hello, Robert Williams. Shalom to you and sending you so much love today. And this is MLK Day, the day when we celebrate and commemorate the life and works of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. He was born in 1929. Wow, almost 100 years ago. He was killed at 39, so he is frozen in our minds really as a young man. And his warnings, his prophetic warnings to America, Greg Palast, are more important today. They're more poignant today. They are more meaningful, and they're truer today than they were when he uttered them throughout the 60s up until his death in 1968. And so it is a joy to have you here. Um, as we are looking at Venezuela, what in the world are we going to do with Venezuela? What about Greenland? As the polar ice caps melt, many people, uh, the United States, and Europe, quite frankly, they feel that they will have greater access to the vast mineral riches in Greenland, even though 90% of the people who live there are not Danish and they're not white. They're Inuit, people who we would call Eskimos.
Mhm.
So I don't even know where to begin. I've been talking with Zach Roberts. Let me just start there.
Mhm.
Zach Roberts is
Mhm.
a brilliant producer who has been one of your uh,
Mhm.
partners, one of your comrades in arms for years. He's been
Yes.
reporting, I'm going to have him in a couple of days. He's been reporting from Minneapolis. My brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, whom you know, just
Mhm.
got back from Minneapolis. He said it is a powder keg. Make no mistake about it. And what do you make of what we are seeing, Greg Palast? Do you expect the tensions to die down or not?
Unfortunately, I think not. And that's because Donald Trump is committed to mayhem. He wants to have excuses to put troops in the street. He wants to have an excuse to declare the Insurrection Act. So it's provocative. He's brought in gangs of thugs in ICE uniforms. And remember, they are offering, if you include student loan forgiveness, over $100,000 per person to bonus for signing up. And you don't have to have a high school diploma. You don't have to have any training of any type. They'll take any warm body who likes to hit other people with nightsticks and chokehold them. This is a big problem. ICE years ago was a border patrol, mostly Hispanic organization, Hispanic members, because they like people who speak Spanish. That's also the border area. We didn't have a war with ICE under Obama. We have a war in America, and this guy, so he's going from cops to ICE to National Guard, and then finally, believe me, he's going to try to put troops in the street because this is practice. Don't think of it as what he's doing now. Think of it as practice for 2028 because he's not going to leave quietly. That's for sure. He's
What
not
do you
going to
think
go
is
into
going
that
to?
gentle good night.
Well, I mean, no reporter has done more reporting on really the vulnerabilities in our electoral system,
Yes.
the purging of registration, the quite frankly the outright vote theft,
Yes.
and now and you have been warning, and it sounded, oh my goodness, listen, it really sounded so dystopian and so far removed. It sounded quite frankly so crazy that
Yeah.
people looked at you and arched their eyebrows to the sky and said, when you would say, look, if we don't get a grip on this, we might not be having elections. It just sounded too unreal to be true. And
Well,
now the
I
president
think
jokes about it. So would you think we should take this as a joke?
I think it's much more subtle and dangerous, Santita. As you know, so I did a film, Vigilantes Inc., which, by the way, I
Mhm.
previewed at Rainbow Push over the summer.
Hmm.
I have a new finished, polished version of it, and I will be, by the way, in Chicago. The film is Vigilantes Inc., America's New Vote Suppression Hitmen. And what it will go through is not how they're going to call off the elections. They don't have to if they rig them. I mean, Putin has elections. Iran has elections. China has elections well through their Politburo. And so we can have elections that aren't elections. And that's what I'm afraid of, that they will be purging so many voters, discounting so many votes. And I'm not talking about, spiders from Space Link. I'm talking about real old fashioned Jim Crow trickery. And in this in Vigilantes, you'll get to meet Major and others, African Americans who had their votes challenged by the self-proclaimed vigilante vote hunters, and they're expanding that out to all these other states. It is ugly business. So they don't have to call off the election. All they have to do is bend 5% of the vote, and they can keep their Congress, and then they can elect Vance, I guess, or Rubio in 28. That's the program. That's the plan. Your vote. That's why you don't steal your own vote and discourage yourself. Things are getting really bad. For example, I had a film, which you can also download at gregpalast.com. By the way, you can download The Best Democracy Money Can Buy at gregpalast.com or YouTube. I think it's on now, too. And that film talked about a system called cross-check, where they take common minority names like Jackson and Washington, and then they say, okay, well, a Jesse Jackson voted in Illinois and a Jesse Jackson voted in Atlanta. They must be the same guy, so we're not going to count their votes. We're going to wipe out their registrations. This is what they were doing. Hundreds of thousands of people in 2016 lost their vote, and that's the reason Trump won. It's that simple. They just literally blocked voters of color, and then they also disqualify ballots, especially mail-in ballots. And if, by the way, if the only way you can vote is in mail-in, please do it. Don't cancel your own vote, but don't steal your own vote. Make them work for it and protect yourself. So one, get that film, but I will be in Chicago on February 5. February 5, set the date at the UU Church, the Unitarian Universalist Church in Hinsdale, February 5, 6:30 p.m. And I'll be showing the film, the latest version of Vigilante, America's New Vote Suppression Hitman. I'll be there and answering questions afterwards. It's going to be a national hookup based out of Chicago. So we're going to have National Indivisible is sponsoring this event. So please, February 5. But yeah, I'm very concerned that they don't officially call off the elections, because Americans, we do like to think that we have a democracy. So they're not going to pull that stunt, but it'll be more subtle. They will knock out so many votes through purges, through disqualifications of ballots, etc. That's what I'm worried about. So get ready. And that system cross-check, guess what? That in Trump has issued an executive order demanding that states, including Illinois and Texas has already given in, turning over their voter rolls specifically so they can do matches for everyone named Garcia in America. And when they find 2 Jose Garcias, they're going to lose their registrations. By the way, one personal thing, take care of your own vote first. That is always check, go online, check out at like Secretary of State of Illinois, Secretary of State in Minnesota, Indiana, Wisconsin. See if you are still registered to vote. And then 60 days before the election, you check again. Because when I talk about millions, do you realize that 24 million voter registrations have been canceled in the last 2 years? 24 million. Now, most of those are people who've died or moved or whatever, but there's about 4 million people wrongly removed, overwhelmingly people of color and students. And now they're beginning to go after women. And by the way, one of the other tricks that Trump has called for is proof of citizenship. That's in his executive order. And you're going to see more of that, where you have to prove you're a citizen. You say, well, big deal, I'm already registered. Well, if you move, you're going to have to re-register. And remember, proof of citizenship, Santita, is either a passport, and only 1 out of 3 Black people have a passport. In fact, only 1 out of 2 Americans have passports. Or second, your original, and I want to emphasize this, your original birth certificate. Do you know where your mom put it? It's like your original birth certificate. You can't just send in a driver's license, because non-citizens are allowed driver's licenses in America. In fact, if you're driving a car, you better have a license whether you're a citizen or not. That's not proof of citizenship. And by the way, in Kansas, when they first did this, it was thrown out in court before Trump's order. If you're in the military and you show your military ID, sorry, you can't vote from that, because that's not proof of citizenship either. We have a lot of people who want to become citizens who join the Army for that purpose, but they're not citizens yet. So they will not accept your military ID. You can get in the way of a bullet for Donald Trump in Greenland but that doesn't mean you get to vote. So
Well,
thank you for your service, right?
well, well, I think that's a new movie. Title of a new movie for you. Well, I've got Tyrone Studemeyer, very, very dear friend,
Mhm.
brilliant corporate executive, has been, but he's also been very, very socially active with Rainbow Push and other organizations. We really depend upon him. He's exhorting us to vote. He's saying our votes will make a difference, and he's absolutely right. But other people say that is not true. And what else did you say, Tyrone? You said that the second term of President Donald Trump's administration, starting January 2025, has negatively impacted Black Americans in employment, economic stability, and civil rights, according to data from 2025 to this year, through all of last year. Decreased unemployment. Well, he increased unemployment, mass layoffs, and for Black women, economic decline, erosion of anti-discrimination measures. You're absolutely right. But now, I mean, and to Tyrone's point, it's now this is spreading, right?
Yes.
Because everybody is feeling this pain, and we see the president is underwater in all polls. Even with him being underwater, he does have a strong core of support. Um, One has to wonder how long that will hold, given the economic instability and the economic pain that everybody's in. So, I
Well,
mean, so what say you? I mean, because particularly when Tyrone is saying that our votes really do matter. Do
our
you think
votes
that people feel
really,
that way?
yeah.
Tell
Our
me,
votes,
even with the stealing and all of that, our votes really do matter.
yes, because I've always said this, they can't steal all the votes all the time. They can just steal some of the votes some of the time. So it is whack-a-mole. We have to keep fighting these things. Now, that I just told you about that cross-check system where they're taking the Garcias and Jacksons and removing them. 90 of the 100 most popular last names in America are minority names like Hernandez, Garcia, Wang, etc. And so what I'm concerned about is that you protect your vote. Now Reverend Jackson, your dad, and we launched a campaign to stop this cross-check vote suppression business, and we won. The first state we won was in Illinois, and then we won working with the ACLU in Indiana, and then working with the ACLU and the League of Women Voters, which, by the way, showed my film Best Democracy 60 times in Kansas to pressure Kansas to stop that system. And they did, even though they had a Republican voting official, Secretary of State. They said enough. And so we have to, now here it is again. Trump brings it back with an executive order. Whether that holds, I don't know. But look, the fight never ends.
Mhm.
Never ends. You don't stop marching over the Selma Bridge, as Senator Hank Sanders of Alabama told me. You got to march over that bridge again and again and again and again. And he means that obviously politically. I mean, I actually marched the bridge with him, and you have marched the bridge, but you don't have to be marching a physical bridge. You have to be marching yourself to the polls. You can make a difference. Again, American elections are usually decided by a few points in key states. Plus, in 26, we've got Congress and Senate. If that doesn't change, well, next year in Greenland, that's the real issue. And now we see in Venezuela, you see, that basically he's bared his claws. Now, one thing I'll say, it's been an interesting outcome at this moment. Now, I knew Hugo Chavez, the late president, very well, and I spoke to him many, many times because I was Venezuela was my beat. Was one of my beats for BBC television news and for the Guardian newspapers. So I spent a lot of time with Hugo Chavez, a lot of it on camera, some of it off. But so he was incredibly popular when he passed away. And no, he wasn't assassinated. The reason the film is called The Assassination of Hugo Chavez, which again, a half-hour film. Go to YouTube, just writing PALAST Chavez, and you'll find it. He actually died of stomach cancer. Too much coffee. He never drank. He was a teetotaler. But Pat Robertson, a pretend man of God. In fact, I don't know if people know, he was defrocked by the Baptist Church. That's why he called himself Dr. Robertson instead of Reverend Robertson.
But wasn't he also
And
a Yale-trained lawyer?
yeah, he was, look, the
People
guy, well,
don't
he
know.
was actually quite progressive when he was young,
Yeah.
and which confused his right-wing senator father. Remember, his father was chairman of the banking committee. Pat Robertson isn't some goober from the sticks. This guy came from privilege and senatorial power, but he wanted a gold mining concession. Not
Yeah.
only does Venezuela have a lot of oil, it has a lot of gold. And he wanted a gold mining concession from Hugo Chavez. Chavez refused to give it to him. So he actually got on his 700 club and said, we have to assassinate. He literally said, we have to take this guy out. We have commandos. He's in charge. He's sitting on our oil. We've got to take him out. That's what our commandos are for. So he literally called for the assassination of Hugo Chavez. Now, I found out about this when I first met the current acting president of Venezuela. And I don't mean the self-proclaimed acting president, Mr. Trump. I'm talking about the actual acting president,
You mean the
Delcy Rodriguez.
Wikipedia page? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah,
The fake wiki? Who does that? Would you explain what that was just very quickly before you continue?
yes, yeah, very quickly. So when Trump was asked who's running Venezuela, he said, me. He said, so he claimed he's the acting president, and he actually changed the Wikipedia page, list himself. And as I say, so he's an acting president of Venezuela. And I figure, well, everyone is allowed a side hustle if you're in economic straits. But so his side hustle is running another nation in his spare time. But Delcy Rodriguez came to me at 2 a.m. That's how I met her, banging on my door in London. She worked at the Venezuelan embassy, and she said she just heard Hugo Chavez had told her to come to me and warn me for the Guardian BBC that he was about to be kidnapped. And that's exactly what happened. He was kidnapped. So when you talk about Maduro being kidnapped by Trump, let's not forget under George W. Bush, you also had the president, then Hugo Chavez, kidnapped, and he was taken to an island and held prisoner there. And then, but there's the racial issue in Venezuela, which people don't talk about, which is that Chavez was the first non-white president of Venezuela in 400 years, the first non-white president. And they gave, and he said, they don't like me because I'm negro e indio, black and Indian. So when he was captured, they put a young mestizo kid in charge of guarding him. So the kid looked at the white kidnappers and looked at Chavez and said, well, who do I look like? And he handed Chavez his cell phone, and that's how he got out alive. When 100,000 people came out of the hills, the poor neighborhoods, surrounded the presidential palace and said, where the coup leaders were inside holding a fake inauguration. This guy, literally an Exxon oil lawyer, declared himself president, and they're having a fake inaugural ball, I kid you not, with the U.S. ambassador there, Bush's ambassador. And they said, well, we're going to kill you all if you don't bring back Chavez. And they did. The helicopter brought him right back to the roof of the presidential palace. But so this time, Trump was taking no chances by leaving it to the Venezuelans, as Bush did, to do the dirty work. He sent in Delta Force and kidnapped Maduro. That's what's going on there. Delcy Rodriguez had given me that warning of Chavez's kidnapping in 2002. And the one thing I should mention is that Delcy, President Rodriguez, is actually a very practical, shrewd, strategic thinker. And as an interim president, now you're wondering, why do they keep the Chavista like Delcy Rodriguez in office? It's because they're the Rubio's choice of this woman, Maria Corina Machado. If you try to shove her down Venezuela's throat, there's going to be civil war. So
Stop.
Yeah.
I think you need to explain that. because um, it seems that she was expecting that once President Maduro was removed, that she would be put in place.
That's right.
And did the president pivot? Did he change his mind? I
Yes.
mean, did his internal intelligence tell him that it would be a bad idea? What happened?
Yes. Well, he got the word. Interestingly, according to the Wall Street Journal, they found the memo from the CIA said
Mhm.
you cannot put Machado in. Rodriguez is the Chavista choice, and if you try to shove a this woman Machado down the Venezuelan's throat, we're going to have mayhem. Also, Chevron Oil get very well. Remember, they, you know, Venezuela is not trying to hold back the oil. They're wanting to sell it to us. Trump shoots his mouth off. Oh, look, I'm getting all this oil from Venezuela. Buddy, we had the oil. We had over 1 million barrels a day were being shipped to the United States, to our Gulf Coast refineries. 1 million barrels a day until Trump forced an embargo down their throats and stopped them from sending us the oil. So now he's trying to take credit for getting us the oil that he's embargoed. He stopped them from selling us. Delcy Rodriguez has been talking to him, explaining, we want to sell you oil. Trump and Rodriguez have one thing in common. They both want to get the oil out of Venezuela and to the Gulf Coast refineries. So, and that's vital for us, but also for Venezuela. So she's very practical, but Trump is basically taking credit for bringing us the oil we had. But here's the problem. Here's the problem, Santita. Venezuela's oil is this really thick glop, which does not flow naturally. It has to be heated. It has to be processed. And if once that oil flow stops, as happened with the embargo, you end up with the pipes, with the glop freezing into tar and the tar freezing into asphalt. Most of the asphalt in the United States, most of our roads are the residue of Venezuelan oil, literally probably 90% of our asphalt. And so they destroyed. So what Trump did with his embargo, he destroyed the infrastructure for producing oil in Venezuela because it just got gummed up. And now he's demanding that oil companies put in $100 billion to rebuild the infrastructure that Trump destroyed. He's the one who destroyed it by embargoing the oil. Now it's going to take years for us to get back to the point where they can ship us 1 million barrels a day, which is what we need. Our Gulf Coast refineries only can handle heavy oil like from Venezuela. So this guy, he wrecks the infrastructure and then says, okay, we got to rebuild it. And he's telling the oil companies to put in the money. Let me tell you something about oil companies. You and I, taxpayers of America, are going to end up paying for that rebuilding of Venezuela's destroyed infrastructure.
But do you think that people
yeah.
are going to catch on to that? I mean, look, Greg Palast. There's a reason I think that you do this reporting for the BBC and for the Guardian. It's not here in the United States. I
That's
get you
correct.
on the other side, even with this story. Um, Americans are asking more questions than ever before. They are not trusting the official narratives at all. And their backs are against the wall. You're paying more money for your utilities. People cannot afford the health care. We're being told we cannot afford health care. Yeah, we can. But it would require you putting the health insurance industry out of business. And that's all that would require. I mean, Americans are now, and I think that part of what we're seeing in Minneapolis is a buildup of tensions, not that seeing this woman murdered, just as we saw George Floyd. It's horrifying. It's a snuff film. It's horrible. But George Floyd also occurred during COVID, when we were facing unprecedented isolation and fear. And now people are even more fearful because they don't know if they'll be able to, where the next meals are coming from. health insurance. I mean, just all of this. Do you think that Americans are going to begin to ask some questions about? I mean, you want to take over Venezuela now, Greenland? Come on.
Well, I think that the American people, every poll shows the American people like, what do we want with Greenland? Why did we invade Venezuela? People are beginning to question it. The problem is right now they've got the media. The media has always been pretty weak, but now they are running scared. I mean, you have to understand. I mean, they killed off. They CBS paid Trump $16 million because they didn't like he didn't like their interview with Kamala Harris. Like, what the hell is that? And, we do have a First Amendment, Mr. President, but I guess not under Trump, too. So people are getting tired of it, but they have no explanation from our mainstream media. Now, in the rest of the world, I am mainstream media, BBC.
Explain that. Explain that.
Okay.
Because you
So
are
the-
you are
Yeah.
with the Guardian. You are their go-to reporter,
Right.
particularly on American political issues. The BBC, you're the go-to. That's where I see you first. How is it that you're mainstream in Britain and in Europe and the rest of the world, and I
Yeah.
can't get you here?
It's a damn good question. If you're in Britain, you could see me at the top of the nightly news. If you're in Australia or New Zealand or India, for example,
Yeah.
in fact, Noam Chomsky once asked me, "Gee, I saw one of your reports on the front page of the India Times. How come it's not in the U.S.?" And I said, "Well, because we manufacture news in the U.S. I mean, it's our unfortunately we turning into, and look at the Washington Post already grabbing its ankles. So we're ending up with a situation where our networks are Pravda, and the Washington Post and other news outlets have become Izvestia, and there's no truth or information in either of those outlets. So we just don't get it in America, and people are really scared. I'm making a film right now with for and George DiCaprio about indigenous rights and the Koch brothers and other things. It's It's called Long Knife, but the key thing is there was just a few frames of Donald Trump where Trump says global warming is a hoax. And, we're including issues about the environment, because natives are very concerned about the environment, our tribes. And we lost a major investor in the film because of a few frames of Donald Trump. The guy said, I'm applying, he's from Europe. He says, I'm applying for a special visa, and I can't have this. And I couldn't blame him. I couldn't say, oh, you have nothing to worry about. He did have something to worry about. They're going to look at our film and they're not going to give him a visa. And I'm totally sympathetic to the guy, but this is what's happening in the media in general. Now, I'm going to go ahead with the film no matter what. But, your typical network, if they feel they're going to lose a major advertiser, they're going to have trouble with their license or any of the other things, this guy Carr running the FCC, when they said, let's get rid of Jimmy Kimmel, you can do this the easy way or the hard way. And they got Colbert canceled. I mean, so why don't we get in the news media? They're running and hiding. They're hiding under the bed, shaking. If they would simply organize themselves together, but that's hard because now Larry Ellison's son has taken over the right-wing billionaire, has simply bought out CBS and the other news outlets. And so their bosses not only are being scared of Trump, but they're actually promoting Trump's reign of news terror.
But I was Don Lemon, the famed journalist who's now an independent. He was hosting the Rainbow Push Excel MLK breakfast today. We had a couple thousand people there. It was incredible.
Wonderful.
And he was saying, he and I were talking, and I said, he was in his phone and just furiously texting. I said, what are you doing? Because he was in between, he was emceeing the program. He said, Santita, they're threatening to arrest me. I said, really? I said, well, good for you. He looked at me. I said, yeah. He said, no, because I'm reporting the story, he had just gotten back from Minneapolis. He said, because I'm reporting the story, they are threatening to arrest me. I said, good for you. I said, the only protected profession in our Constitution is the press, it's journalists. And I said, let this go to the Supreme Court, Don. Let it go. I said, because at some point, you can't be intimidated by this. And I don't think that he will be. He announced it. He said, well, I guess I'm in the right place. I'm telling you also, if something happens to me, I said, yeah, we will be there for you. Because they've already pulled all the journalists. No, they killed them in Gaza. I mean, what are we doing, Greg? I mean, I can't get you. I mean, you trained in economics at the premier school for economics in the world at the University of Chicago.
Yes.
I, I, I can't get you on corporate media in the United States. I've got to, every time I try to find you, and not try to find you, I don't have to try. India Times, BBC, The Guardian, I can find you there. Washington Post, no. They will mention you in an article. They will circle back. I've seen it. They will circle back.
Yeah, I know.
To
And they
you.
often now quote me even without mentioning my name, but yeah, it really is a reign of terror. I mean, it's hard to explain how frightened the executives are of any type of hard investigative news exposure. It's also expensive, and their lawyer, they're just worried about these costs. And I've seen this before. Trump didn't invent intimidation in the media. Trump didn't invent scared media executives. I had a story on Barrick Gold Mining, which had literally, this is a gold mining company in which George Bush Sr. had a big interest. And they, there's a story from years ago where they took control of this gold field. There were what they call jewelry miners, Tanzanian miners. This is in Africa. And they literally ran bulldozers over the property and buried 50 people alive to get at their gold. And I reported in The Guardian, but I could not. But the New York Times ran a story about this company, but never mentioned the name of the company. It was a front page story about Barrick Gold Mining, and it didn't mention that George Bush was on their board. They didn't even mention it because they're saying, oh, why is this company getting away with all this environmental crime? The answer is, well, who's on their board, baby? George W. was president, and Daddy was making money off this corporation, making millions.
Which is the Carlyle Group, right?
Yeah, and Carlisle was there too. Yeah, I mean, Barrick was a separate huge gold mining company, and I could not get that story into the U.S. press, even though in the U.S. we have a First Amendment. In Britain, I don't. They sued me and then backed out. Bush's company sued me for 15 million. I can't remember the number, something crazy, and sued the Guardian. And but the Guardian would not back down. I certainly wouldn't. And so this is really important. Fear has always been there, but Trump has raised it to a virtuoso level. And he's now got more people who are ready to kiss his mistletoe. I mean, to see what Jeff Bezos has now done to destroy the Washington Post.
What did he
I mean,
just
that
do?
itself is a crime against journalism.
Well, but it goes beyond Trump, because now we have Elon Musk. They're constructing these corporate cities where they won't have elections. Really, they're going to have boards that they select, and these will be cities, American cities, where Americans will live, because they don't believe in elections at all. I mean, so President Trump is 80, and he's ailing. That's clear. I want to look at, like, when Dorothy got to the wizard. I mean, when she pulled back the curtain, I think we got to pull back the curtain, because there's a lot that's going on here. And do you see a connection between the kidnapping of Maduro and the aggressive tactics of ICE, culminating, at least one of the culminations? Help us to make sense of this.
They're desensitizing us to violence and war action. They're desensitized. They can send commandos into Venezuela to kidnap a president. Then what's the big deal of going into the streets of Minneapolis and shooting protesters or arresting them? So they're getting us used to this idea. They're amassing the fear. You know, Franklin Roosevelt said, "We have nothing to fear but fear itself."
Mhm.
The Trumpistas, and that, you know, if he's gone, you're going to have Vance, you're going to have Rubio, and the rest of them.
Mhm.
It's a cult. It's not a person. And in this cult, their line is, "We have nothing to sell you but fear itself." That's their game. They're coming over the borders at us. They're bringing drugs, rapists, da 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 da. You know, and by the way, this is important. Um, I do think I followed the Venezuelan elections closely. Hugo Chavez was absolutely elected overwhelmingly in the cleanest elections in the world. Even Jimmy Carter, who didn't like him, said that Chavez's elections were some of the cleanest he's seen, certainly cleaner than in our state of Georgia. But it looks like Maduro lost and refused to leave office. But one thing he isn't. So that, you know, that's just, there's no excuse for that. But one thing he is not, and I can tell you that right now, because I know Maduro. He came to visit me, by the way, in New York at my house there,
Mhm.
my old house. And Maduro is definitely not a drug kingpin.
Mhm.
Um, Not in the least, because the United Nations World Drug Trafficking Report, the UN does a report every year on where drugs are coming and going. They said Venezuela does not produce drugs. You don't produce cocaine in Venezuela. You don't produce fentanyl in Venezuela. Actually, most of our fentanyl is made in New Jersey, by the way, not Canada. You know, so to say that Maduro was a drug kingpin was like Trump's statement that Canada is the source of fentanyl. But when you say Maduro is the source of cocaine, Americans believe that right away. He's a brown guy and he's South America. He must be selling cocaine. Well, only a fool would run their drugs through Venezuela and then up the Caribbean where they're going to be captured, no question, because it's very easy. The Caribbean is watched and guarded, and you've got warships there and everything. If you're going to run drugs, they all come up the Pacific coast. Look at a map. Venezuela does traffic drugs because it doesn't have any to traffic, and the drugs go up the Pacific coast. And Venezuela doesn't have an inch of beach on the Pacific coast.
Mhm.
And so I'm just telling you how there are drugs that come up, but they ain't from Maduro. Whatever you think of Maduro, I can tell you one thing: he ain't no drug dealer.
Wha- So, what is the assassination? Why did you name your this film "The Assassination of Hugo
Well,
Chavez"?
this is while Hugo. I actually put out the film for BBC television um, while Chavez was still alive. So there was kind of an irony to it because at the time the film was launched, he was very much alive. But
Mhm.
like I say, the Reverend or not Reverend, the defrocked Reverend Pat Robertson called for his assassination, and we have that at the beginning of the film. And this is the problem. And then of course the Bush administration was trying to get him kidnapped, and one of the reasons why President Maduro came to me while he had I guess he was vice president at the time. Um, Maduro came to me because I had information that a company then called Wackenhut, now called Geo, which by the way, they're the ones that build the deportation centers here. And Wackenhut agents were hired to assassinate Chavez, and that was busted. So I was writing up that story. So, you know, it didn't just start with Trump. It didn't start with
Mhm.
Trump. It started with George W. Bush. Interestingly, Chavez told me that he got along well with his daddy, Bush Sr.
Mhm.
He said, because he's an oil man and I'm an oil man. We're all oil men.
Well,
Um, and-
but he was also a different kind of guy. It seems that his son was captured by their interest because
yes.
remember, I mean, politics have changed so much, and the neocons have really taken over.
Well, they
And
did. That's what happened. There was a huge fight between the State Department and the neocons and the Defense
Mhm.
Department. The State Department to remove Chavez. They said he was elected, he's popular, and God forbid we remove him. All hell's going to break loose if we kill him or kidnap him. But Bush went ahead through the neocon crew over at the Defense Department. Now, and Trump won, there was again a split. You had these generals, and the generals, interestingly enough, were very uninterested in invading Venezuela. Don't forget that Trump had to fire the head of the Southern Command, who's in control of the Caribbean, because he was told by Trump, you have to plan an invasion of Venezuela, would not go along with it. By the way, it didn't hurt in terms for Trump's view. He didn't hesitate about firing the head of the Southern Command, one of our most brilliant military leaders that we had. He's African American.
Mm-hmm.
And so, so he immediately said, oh, he's there because of DEI. No, he's not there because of DEI. He was there because this guy has combat experience and strategic knowledge of what we need to do with our military. And it's not to invade Venezuela.
But Greg, DEI, let's just stop this right here, because DEI and affirmative action, you have to be qualified in order to be considered. All affirmative action, unlike people who get into school or get a job because of nepotism or because of a legacy clause, even when George W. Bush, went to get his honorary degree from Yale, the school from which he graduated, he laughed. He's one of the funniest people in the world, and that's true. I'm just telling you up close, everybody. He is.
Yeah,
nice guy. You don't have to agree with his politics, but he's a nice guy. And he said, you know what? Let me tell you something. I don't even know how I got into this place. And he just laughed about, and everybody laughed. I mean, so wait a minute. Hold on. He can get in. No one sweats him. He knows it was nepotism, and he will tell you that. But Black kids, Indigenous kids, women, Latinos, and all these people who have worked hard, who have the test scores, they tell you that you need to get, this is the minimum test score. More than test scores are considered when you get into school or anything. So, I mean, when they throw out, when DEI, how they're going to throw out people, and Pete Hegseth, what was he in the National Guard? I'm not diminishing the National Guard, but he did.
But I know he's no. He talks about male warriors.
What is he talking about?
Yeah, well, first of all, George W. Bush, I will never forget, when we were attacked on September 11th back in 2001. He's been talking to young kids in Texas, mostly Hispanic kids, reading their story. But he told them, hey, listen, have a dream, because I was a C student, but I still got into Yale. You got into Yale because your grandfather, Prescott Bush, was on the board of trustees of Yale. So the C student who can't get through an English language sentence, though he does have a sense of humor, can't get through an English language sentence, got into Yale. And how many kids with perfect SAT scores but were the wrong color were bumped out for this kid, for one of the Bushes? And same with Kerry, and same with the Kennedys.
Or were public school students who might have had the minimum test score, the minimum SAT score that you needed to get in. Doesn't mean that you can't make it.
Let me tell you something. I'm an affirmative action baby. There was a time when, because I came from the poorest neighborhood in Los Angeles, and I was allowed, I had taken a bunch of tests, which said I had a lot of native intelligence, which is nice, but I couldn't pass a basic English test. Now, as you know, I'm a best-selling author, and I won the Trinity Philosophical Prize, which is for the best writer in the English language. But when I applied to school, I couldn't pass a simple English language test because I came from this barrio school where if you spoke English, they actually called my principal. They said, "What's wrong with your school?" He said, "What do you mean what's wrong with our school?" And he said, "The fact that Greg Palast can speak English at all is a big accomplishment where we come from." So they accepted that, and they said, "Okay, we'll give you a chance. See how you do." I did okay. And that's what affirmative action is. It's giving people with the talent and the grades and the ability, just giving them a second look and a chance. So you have all the, if I will say in the affirmative action case, they did say if you get rid of this legatee business, so you know what that is. If your father or mother went to a school, you are automatically put at the top of the list.
Mm-hmm.
Yale, Harvard has almost 45, almost half their class is legatees. They're not
Absolutely.
there because of their ability. That doesn't mean that they don't have ability, but kids from the barrio, from the ghetto, from wherever you're coming from, that ain't them, that ain't part of the elite, you've got to do way surpass these C students whose daddies went there and gave a lot of money.
Before you go,
Mm-hmm.
and because there's so much, because when you come to Chicago next week, I want to have
Yes.
you back on because we need to talk about Greenland. We've got to dig down deep in Venezuela. And I do believe that Minneapolis is not going to go anywhere. I mean, even in this cold, uh, well, just we feel watching what happened to Renee Good is just it it summons up so much pain, the pain that we felt with George Floyd. It's awful. There's so much that is going on. What is our takeaway in this moment as I think we're being assaulted every day, but I don't know. I don't even
We're
know.
going to, yeah, I
I
think we're going
don't
to
know
have
what
to,
to look
yeah,
at.
exactly. That's what I want to do as Steve Bannon calls Trump's actions, Venezuela Tuesday, Greenland Wednesday, Minneapolis Thursday,
Ah,
what's happening is we're getting flooded and being scattered with all these attacks. And my personal idea is that we begin to focus the attacks. I was a keynote speaker at the San Diego No Kings Day, and we had 100,000 people in a military town in San Diego. 100,000 people came out in San Diego, and I was proud to be there. And it was uplifting. And my mother is buried there, full military honors, because she was the first woman to join the United States Coast Guard after Pearl Harbor.
oh wow.
And so she's buried at Camp Pendleton. And that while I'm speaking, you got JD Vance and Hegwich were there walking on my mother's grave. And Hegwich is talking about, we got to bring back the male warrior spirit. Well, buddy, you're lucky that my mother didn't come out of the ground and grab you. Then you'd find out what a female warrior spirit is like. Take my word for it. She would, she, yeah. So she marched to fight the fascists in World War II, and she marched to fight the fascists who were trying to, who were killing Vietnamese, and she marched for civil rights because she brought me up to march as she did, and she was a super patriot. She's a super patriot. I've got her, I had the flag that draped her coffin with me at No King's Day, and I can't tell you how many military families came to me. How many military families came to me with telling me that they also had the flags, but it was tougher because these are mothers who buried their kids
Oh boy.
in these crazy wars that we've had. And now, really, am I ready to send my son to die in Greenland or in Venezuela? That's the other thing about Venezuela. They killed 100 people. It wasn't like, they say, no one was killed. Yeah. How about the people that were assigned to protect the president? Did a lousy job, but they killed 100 people. And I got to tell you something. I've told you, Delcy Rodriguez, Venezuela has been trying to sell oil to the U.S. You didn't have to kidnap Maduro or take control of Venezuela or be its acting pretend president. They were happy to sell us oil by contract, not by gunboat. They want to sell us the oil. And it's Trump who stopped them. And now he's saying, look, because I grabbed Maduro and I invaded their nation, we can get the oil now. Well, you had the oil before, buddy, before you destroyed that nation, destroyed the infrastructure. And by the way, why, Mr. Trump, do you think that millions of people have fled Venezuela? You had a lockdown embargo. They couldn't buy food. They couldn't buy medicine. They couldn't buy the parts to keep their oil infrastructure alive. And now you're saying, oh, we got to build it. They didn't destroy it. You did, Mr. Trump. You destroyed our peaceful relations for all the back and forth between Bush and Chavez. They never stopped trading the oil.
Mm.
They understood that. And now we've got, like a 7-year-old cranky baby. And by the way, and I believe it too, even though I know that the oil companies, CIA, OPEC, all the big players want to keep Delcy Rodriguez in office, to which she was elected. But Machado killed her chance ultimately because she didn't turn down the Nobel Prize and say Trump should get it, as if she could somehow say, oh, don't give it to me, give it to that guy. It's not a bus transfer. And then she did this embarrassing thing of handing him her medal. It's like the 7-year-old kid who goes to a birthday party and he bursts into tears because the birthday boy is opening up the presents. So they give him a little present to open up, so he can pretend. Well, this 7-year-old gets to get look. He's beaming. He's so happy that he's gotten this Nobel Prize medal. He didn't win it. And you know what? Believe it or not, Mr. Trump, you don't often get medals for peace by invading other countries. I mean, you do. I mean, Machado, I was actually shocked, to be honest, that Machado was given the Nobel Peace Prize. Even Henry Kissinger, at least they said, he did cut a deal for the U.S. to surrender in Vietnam. Okay, so you could say that he had something to do with peace in Vietnam. He also had something to do with destroying Vietnam, but he had something to do with the peace. Machado has never done anything that anyone would call peaceful. She has called for the invasion of her own country. She applauded the kidnapping of her own president. Now, come on. That's called treason. And that's bloody, and that's a statement of a cowardly warrior, not a Nobel Prize peacemaker. I mean, the same prize given to the Dalai Lama? Are you kidding me? So, and then Trump got jealous. So I have no doubt that had something to do with it. Besides, as they say, the adults in the room told him, no, you don't okay, so you could grab Maduro, but you do not overthrow the rest of the elected government.
Greg Palast, investigative reporter, BBC, The Guardian. If you want to find out about Venezuela, if you want to find out about our elections, first go to gregpalast.com and then go to the BBC and to The Guardian. Start there. And then go all around the world and we'll get them back to the United States. I cannot wait to be with you February 5th here in Chicago. And don't be surprised if I reach back out to you. I love Indivisible. And I'm going to tell Rainbow Push about this so that we can join you there. Absolutely, because we need to. Oh, of course I'm going to be there. I love you, Greg. Okay. Oh, my goodness. And everybody, let's continue this conversation on MLK Day. Let's continue this conversation as we talk about Dr. King's legacy, as we talk about Venezuela, Greenland, Minneapolis. There is a lot going on, everybody. GregPalast.com, GregPalast.com. See his movies there. The best democracy money can buy. All of this stuff really, really matters right now, today. Oh, my goodness. And, of course, get his books. Support this man as he supports us. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Back in a moment.